It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for this year's Veterans Day ceremony. Wes Bryant retired from the United States Air Force in 2018 at the rank of Master Sergeant after 20 years of active duty service. He went on to co-author the book Hunting the Caliphate with retired Major General Dana Petard. In 2014, as a Senior Special Operations Forces Tactical Air Control Party Joint Terminal Attack Controller, he was part of the elite Special Operations Task Force chosen to secure Baghdad and northern Iraq against the newly emerged threat of ISIS. Embedded with the Special Forces teams under a Navy SEAL task force, Wes was the tactical lead for a contingent of Special Operations JTACs to first set foot in Iraq to stop ISIS. As the senior enlisted JTAC to establish the BIOP strike cell, Bryant coordinated and controlled the first airstrikes against ISIS in the Baghdad region. He later deployed as the Senior Special Tactics JTAC for Special Operations Task Forces hunting ISIS in Syria and Afghanistan. During his career, he completed 9 deployments throughout the Middle East and Asia theaters of operation where he earned a Meritorious Service Medal and Bronze Star. Wes earned his bachelor's degree in Asian Studies from the University of Maryland University College. He currently pursues writing and editing and teaches Chinese Kung Fu and Tai Chi just down the road in Pittsboro, where he lives with his wife Katie and their 2 daughters. Join us as we welcome Wes Bryant.
Good afternoon. Thank you to everyone here in Johnston County for doing what you can amidst the crisis of a pandemic and a time of social and political turmoil to forget all of that just for a moment and join in fellowship on this day, Veterans Day. Members of the community, family and friends, fellow veterans, and the Johnston County government and public school system who organized this event, it is a privilege for me to present on such an important day, as much as it was truly a privilege for me to serve this nation. Veterans Day has an interesting history. Understanding that history helps us to get at just what the day was meant to be. What we now observe as Veterans Day evolved from the earlier Armistice Day, created after the end of World War I. On November 11th, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, the cessation of hostilities between the Allies and Germany took place, leading to the armistice. Armistice Day was set in place to honor the end of the hostilities and to remember those who sacrificed. At the time, World War I was a bit idealistically termed the war to end all wars. Then came World War II, the Korean War, and in 1954, the name of that day, Armistice Day, was changed to the more all-encompassing Veterans Day. After that, our nation saw the Vietnam War, a host of smaller-scale global conflicts, and the turmoil in the Middle East, leading to what has become America's longest war that is still ongoing, the War on Terror. And so Veterans Day is meant to honor and remember all veterans, living and past, who have served our nation both in times of peace and times of war. I read an article about Veterans Day a while back that went on lamenting this belief that these days of remembrance, like Veterans Day and Memorial Day, have simply become kind of occasions for celebrating what was termed a culture of warmongering. For many veterans, these statements can be upsetting. But the truth is, the ability to voice those types of sentiments is a hallmark of a truly free society. And as military members in a free society, we don't always personally agree with every policy made or every order that comes down from up high. That's the price to be paid for serving something greater than yourself. It's not always just about you and your personal convictions. So as veterans, we all have that one truth in common. At some point in our lives, We put aside our own personal desires, comforts, and even sometimes convictions toward a greater good. We're a nation with a rich history of warfare. That's a somber truth. And when we look back at our history honestly, we have made some mistakes, probably made a lot of mistakes. But we're a nation that has proven time and again that when no one else is up to the task, we will stand in the face of true evil and injustice for the good of humanity and above all other nations. I saw that firsthand most clearly in the summer of 2014. ISIS was rampaging across northeast Syria and northern Iraq, pretty much completely unchecked. They were terrorizing a fledgling democratic Iraq that we'd helped establish after the removal of Saddam's regime and that long Iraq war. Back then, we could throw spears all day at what strategic missteps or lost opportunities had led up to that point. We could sit back and lament over the mistakes made in the years leading up that may have contributed to the shocking rise of ISIS. And a lot of people did that and still do. But when a small group of Americans infilled into Baghdad to help thwart off this juggernaut that we called ISIS and defend the Iraqi people, how we got to that point just didn't matter. We had in front of us then the way of life and democracy of a friend and ally in Iraq, being threatened by a zealous, extremist, and extremely brutal terrorist army. On a daily basis, atrocious crimes were being committed against men, women, and children, Iraqis, Syrians, Kurds, Yazidis, and others. ISIS's reign of terror, and it was real terror, had no bounds. But America rose, and we stopped them. It wasn't perfect, but we stopped them. And this is a theme that America embodies time and again through our history, one that has defined our military and the veterans in its service. When it's time to defend our nation, we rise. When it's time to stand for the defenseless, we rise. Because our nation believes in the fundamental ideal that all of mankind deserves to thrive, to live free, and to be safe from oppression and persecution. When all other measures fail, it is our veterans who are called on to serve as sword, shield, and sentry against those who would and do inflict evil upon the innocent. And there's another overlooked beauty of our military. That's that its members constitute a microcosm of our nation. The American military is made up of men and women of every color, creed, culture, religion, and political leaning. In my career, I served and fought alongside people of all walks of life, many of whom were vastly different from me in pretty much every sense. But in service to our nation, none of our differences mattered. We were Americans first, united by a common ideal and against a common enemy. Our allegiance was to our home, our nation, and one another. Out here in the real world, removed from our past life in the military, or the time we may have spent in war or a combat zone, we need to remember that truth, and as a society strive to embrace it. Especially days like today. Our flag represents all of this to me. It's just a cloth on one hand, but the power lies in what it symbolizes. These ideals common to all of us as Americans: freedom, democracy, and the right to thrive. The red, white, and blue signify, respectively, hardiness and valor, purity and innocence, vigilance, perseverance, and justice. We're far from perfect at any of it, but we are ever striving. And the stars harken back to our nation's original motto, E pluribus unum, from many, one. So we look at this flag and remember on days like today what each and every veteran, living and past, has raised their hand in defense and service of. Not just for this nation, but for the ideals and principles that define a free humanity. This Veterans Day, we honor and remember those who have answered our nation's call to serve something greater than themselves. To all of you out there living and past, thank you.